Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Page of Swords podcast. This is episode 48, and I'm bringing you Jamie Pinder onto the show, who is an IFBB Women's Physique Pro, who has a great YouTube channel, Cats, Clits, and Clen, right? Did I get the right order?
You did.
And yeah, I'm so happy to bring you on, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. So just to do a brief history of your competitive career here, when did you start competing?
I started competing back in like 2008.
Okay.
So I started as a bikini competitor and I did very bad as last place in all my bikini shows. And honestly, I started in bikini because that's what my coach at the time was like, that's where you have to start. But I was not made for the bikini division at all. I was so awkward in heels. The posing was not for me at all. There's a video of my first show somewhere. I've got to find it because I look like a giraffe on ice skates. It's hilarious. But, I'm really happy I failed so bad at those shows because it really just lit the fire for me to push even harder. I ended up making the switch to women's physique in 2012. Okay. And that's where I ended up doing, I actually lost my very first bikini show at the New England's. Okay. And I ended up coming back in women's physique and winning that show, which was a huge victory for me. And then 2 weeks later, I went to nationals, won my pro card. 6 months later, went to my first pro show and won my pro debut. 12 weeks later was at my first Olympia. And then, I ended up competing professionally from 2012 until about 2017. And 2017, after the 2017 Olympia, I got very badly injured. So, and I messed up my hormones pretty bad. And that's kind of what led me on my journey of, what I talk about with women now. So yeah, my last show was 2017 Olympia. And I've kind of I'm kind of at peace with being a retired IFBB pro. I really focus on being a coach now. Competing isn't completely out of the question, but there are a lot of things in the sport right now that would need to change in order for me to put as much of my life on hold in order to do that, right? Because bodybuilding is a sport that takes a lot and it does not give a lot back, especially to the women in this sport. So they've got to make it worth my while. And right now the prize winnings especially for the female divisions, to me, it's a slap in the face to the women. You look at every other professional female sport, and granted, they're also not making as much as the men, but they at least don't have to resort to doing porn in order to support themselves as professional athletes.
Yeah, you're seeing that a lot now. And I mean, however you ladies got to make the money and everything, but it's just I'm never surprised anymore. It's just I mean, people are paying for it.
It's one thing if a woman who is in this sport, likes to do that. And she's this makes me feel empowered. I love doing this. It turns me on. There are some women who they love it, and that's great. If you go on with your bad self, I support you. But unfortunately, what I see, and excuse me, I got COVID in January and I'm still this cough. But anyways, the thing that I see a lot in this sport is you see a lot of women who end up getting even close to the professional realm where they're spending an enormous amount of time, an enormous amount of money competing in this sport, trying to chase the pro card or chase the Olympia placing. And unfortunately, again, this sport is really fucking expensive and you don't earn really anything. And, when you are committing so much time to being an athlete, it's very hard to work a normal 9-to-5 job or work a job that's going to support you financially. And a lot of times these women will resort to doing sex work in order to pay to compete. And they're not doing the sex work because they enjoy it. They're not doing it because it makes them feel empowered. They're doing it out of that's their only resort in order to do the thing that they love to do.
And it's easier.
In those situations, I'm okay, well, there's a problem in this sport if the women who are competing in it have to resort to sex work in order to compete. That's where I think and I think if the earnings were more in this sport for women, less women would have to resort to sex work.
Right. And I think that with her biceps, and they pay very well, it's hard to say no. You get photography out of it. And that's like, some people want to use that for their social media and their following, hoping that that goes up. Because I mean, what's your partake with social media? Like how it's become, it can be negative and positive. But nowadays, if you want, as a pro, I feel like you kind of have to have that following to not only give the show promoters, make them money, but it's going to be a way for you to get fans and somehow maybe make some money from it. It's a lot of work too.
Yeah, I mean, I've personally, on a personal level, how I feel about social media, I fucking hate it. I hate social media. Because I'm a person where like I like being present in I like the real world. I like to have real conversations with people that I'm in the same room with. I like to actually pick up the phone and call people. That's the type of human interaction I think that humans need more of. And when you look at like, especially like an app like Instagram, it's especially with the new algorithm, it makes it really difficult for people to live in the real world because the algorithm is based on how much engagement you have in real time with people. So Instagram is expecting that all of these like fitness influencers, that they are glued to their phone, that every time someone makes a comment, DMs them, that they are responding to them in real time right away. And that's how they go up on the algorithm. So, to me, it's like the social media has such a level of control over your time. And to me, there's also like, I think a lot of like the people that are fans of like fitness influencers, they feel like those fitness influencers like owe it to them to share everything in their life, where I'm also more of like, it's funny because I am more of a private person, but when I talk in my videos, I am very open and I tell a lot of stories that are very kind of like hard to talk about. And that most like things most people don't want to talk about, like, my clit and my sex life and everything else. But like on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to record myself doing absolutely everything I do in my life. And I think that's like, if you're someone like myself and you're trying to use social media as a tool for business and to make money, it is like this kind of like, it's really like a huge commitment that you make to allowing people into your life, right? So for me, like personally, I don't really like it, but I also see the value in it. Because I also see that the message that I have about keeping women informed, keeping women safe, making the right choices for themselves, I've been able to reach more women because of social media. So it's like there are positives to take away from it. And there are women who I coach and that I work with right now that had they not found me on social media, I wouldn't have been able to help their health, like help their longevity. And I also second as a life coach to a lot of my clients. And I mean, some of them have also repaired relationships with kids they haven't talked to in 10 years, or they quit shitty jobs they have. So it's like, when I look at it in that, there's definitely positives and negatives to it. Another kind of like negative in this sphere of coaching and fitness and bodybuilding is you have there used to be no information for women when it came to PEDs, right? And now it's like, figuring out what information is the right information, right? And what information is the right information for you and your goals. Right. Because someone listening to my content, and then they might listen to someone like the Protein 305 girl, and they're going to be like, oh, well, hold on. Which one am I, who do I listen to? Because our advice is very, very different. Right. And it's really like, okay, not only do you have to figure out what information is like scientifically correct and figuring that out, but who's giving me the correct advice for the journey I want to take with my body, the journey I want to take in fitness, because the women's physique competitor that wants to make it to the Olympia is not going to be doing and being like, they're going to be more open to risk than a woman who say, she's a mother of 5 and she finally got all the kids out of the house and she just wants to do this bucket list thing where, she's always wanted to compete. We're not going to do and give her the same advice that we're going to give someone who's been competing for 10 years and is on the Olympia stage. So it's like, I think that especially for women right now, it's a lot to dig through. And I think one of the like most important takeaways for your listeners is the first thing to do is like really figure out like where it is that you want to go with your journey and what is it that you want to do with yourself.
Right.
And then finding like when you do find people who are offering information about these things, make sure that like, especially like how they look, how they sound, the other people they work with, is that the kind of results that you want? And does their values, do they align with yours? Do they care about the same things that you care about in your health? Or if they don't care about it in themselves, do they at least like understand that you value it and are going to coach you accordingly, right?
Right. And I think it is per division. I think you've talked about this a lot with finding your division and how far you want to push it. Because I know girls that they think about the physique or like leveling up from figure to physique, because now there's such a gray area. It's like, I can't tell. It's like figures got heels, physique's got no heels, because it's kind of like the same muscle size and conditioning is always a plus, but it's just hard and the posing's different. But even that, like when you're talking about PEDs, like that also comes into play, because I think if you want to push it to physique, you're going to be really surprised how much maybe you might need compared to someone else.
And I think another thing for women to consider is if you feel like you need to do loads of drugs in order to achieve the goal that you are trying to get in bodybuilding, whether that's being an Olympian, whether that's just getting on a national level stage, whatever it may be, I will tell you, the people that are made for this sport do not need boatloads of drugs in order to get there. If you need a crazy stack of highly androgenic drugs for your body to look the way that you want it to look, you might not be made for this sport. Just like if I wanted to be a professional basketball player, like I have to be realistic. I'm 5'4". Am I going to be a great WNBA basketball player? No. But why is it that people in the bodybuilding sphere think, okay, if I'm not genetically made for this sport, I'm just going to use all the fucking drugs I can in order to compensate for my lack of genetics, and I'm going to try and make it that way. And I think because a lot of people kind of, they give me a hard time because they're like, oh, you don't talk about what the pros really do. And I'm like, listen, you think that who's the one that just won the figure Arnold? Sydney Gillen. Sydney Gillen. You think Sydney Gillen's been on the Olympia stage since 2012. You think that she'd have the longevity to keep on placing and then win 5 Olympias and still look as gorgeous and feminine as she does if she was blasting drugs? And she is the top of what she does. She is the best in the world for 5 years in a row. And you're telling me that she's taking boatloads of drugs?
Oh, no.
So it's like, I think that there also needs to be a level of like having realistic expectation for your own genetic potential. I'm very lucky. Like both of my parents are both like hyper muscular. My brother, he steps into the gym for a week and he blows up. Like, so we just come from really good genetics. My mom, she wouldn't even lift weights. She would garden in the summer. And like, she'd have cap delts and like big old biceps. So it's like, you also have to take like your level of risk should also like some consideration needs to be in where your genetic potential is, and not using the drugs as a way to overcome those genetic, downfalls that you have.
Yeah. And it should always be like food and training first. I mean, that's what bodybuilding is built on, right? We need to work out to look a certain way and build a shape, or like artwork and clay, and you build on. And then, when you hit, prep or whatever it is, and you want to just use something to tighten up, sprinkle a little bit in, but all that other stuff is still there. Like you got to like work on those basics first. And there's no magic pill. And I'm sure you've talked about that so many times. There's no magic pill. And yeah, like you said, be realistic, because, no one wants to say, sorry, you have shitty genetics, because you can still work hard in the gym and be a bodybuilder. But if your expectations are to hit this like high pro level and stuff, it's like we just talked about with Sydney. I always look at Sydney too. And she she's been doing track and all kinds of sports from like since she was a child till now. I mean, I played sports like in high school, but there was a big chunk of time in college where I did no activity. So that's a good chunk of time that I didn't work out. So I don't think people realize like, you know, there's these like things to think about too.
Right. And, you know, one way to think about like the anabolics or the like any PEDs is they're just like any other supplement. They're supplemental to an already good diet, training, nutrition plan. And like one of the things that I commonly see, especially with women in like the bikini division, is they want to continue to do hours of cardio. They want to continue to stay into show shape, and they want to continue to eat in a deficit, like dieting all year round. And instead of increasing food, decreasing workload and cardio, which is going to help them increase their muscle mass, they want to continue to have an eating disorder, which is it's disordered eating at the point where like that we're talking about. And they want to kind of use the anabolics as a way to kind of like overcome their eating disorder. And it's like anabolics are not a band-aid for your poor life choices. And I see this with TRT with women as well, especially with young women who they come to me and they have really low testosterone. And like they're in their late 20s, early 30s. You should not be having issues with testosterone that young. And they come to me with low test. So like, you know, if we just look at the numbers, we're like, oh, okay, well, you would be someone who would like be a potential candidate for TRT, but what does the rest of your fucking life look like? Are you stressed to the gills? Are you not sleeping? Are you not eating enough? Are you overtraining? Because a lot of these young women who come to me with low T, they want to just get on testosterone therapy instead of fixing their shitty life choices. And it's like, no, like take care of your nutrition, take care of your sleep, mitigate your stress, get all those things in line, and then test your testosterone. You know, like I think women need to stop thinking of these drugs as band-aids for poor nutrition, poor diet, poor sleep, poor stress management. You know, fix those things first. And we don't want to have to be on TRT when we're in our 30s. Like that's not something that you want to happen.
No, and isn't it kind of expensive? I've never had to use the TRT, but I mean,
for women, I mean, when it comes to like the actual like getting testosterone, you'd be using such a small amount anyways. It's actually fairly inexpensive. The expensive part is getting your blood work all the time to make sure your levels are where they're supposed to be. That's really the expensive part.
Yeah, and then
if you are working with a TRT therapy or a TRT clinic, they often like will charge you, you know, for the consultation. And so it depends on how you're doing it, but generally it's not very expensive, but still like use your no cost tools first.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Sleep and stress management. It's not easy, but it's free and you do it at home for the most part. So
exactly.
It boggles my mind. And like you said earlier with social media, I think, you ever see how people are so vague with their questions? Like, how much should a bikini girl take Anavar? And then it's like, they give you this short worded answer back. And it's like, I like that you're on YouTube or there's podcasts where there's a longer time for information. And if people just sit down and listen, they would learn a lot, but they just want this quick Instagram answer. It's like, oh yeah, I don't know anything about you, but if you're in bikini, 10 milligrams, you're good. And it's like, there's just a lot of gray area that's getting lost that I don't think people realize it's a lot more.
Right. And I think another kind of like misnomer that a lot of women just think that, oh, it's Anavar, it's nothing. It's like a vitamin, you know, I'm just going to like pop it every day. Right. And they think that there's no consequence behind that. So, and you know, not that everyone that does Anavar is going to get completely fucked up, but if you don't know where things are from the start, how do you know you're in a good place to take drugs that are going to impact your hormone health? They're going to impact your internal health. And one thing I will say about Anavar right now is it is very hard to get real Anavar right now. There's a shortage of the raws.
Mhm.
And a lot of the underground labs, you'll either notice that it is out of stock. And if it's not out of stock, then I would be very, very weary about the Anavar that any women are getting these days. So ladies, like, take note, like, if you are looking to do Anavar, you just purchased Anavar, I would definitely test it first.
Yeah.
It
Slow, at
is
least slow and taper up if you have to, just kind of ease into it, because then it's a little easier to cut it.
right. I would say even like I think there's, it's something about like the political situation that's going on in the world
Yeah.
right now that
Yeah.
these underground labs can't get this raw material. I don't know the whole downstream reason why.
Mhm.
But from the people I know that like run labs, this is what I've heard.
Yeah.
So I would just, ladies, like, even before you start it, I would test it. Go to roidtest.com
Mhm.
and get a testing kit and make sure that that indeed is Anavar. Because a lot of the things that Anavar is going to be faked as are going to be much more androgenic, which means that you are going to be way more likely to get those virilization side effects.
Absolutely. And that goes for like Primo and stuff too. I've heard the same thing where, you got to be really careful with it and then keep track of your symptoms and stuff. Like if you were never someone that had acne before and you start to get it on your back, that's like a good sign that I would think that that stuff is fake if you start getting like signs that you've never had before or never seen.
Right. And especially I've been talking to women recently who have started Anavar that they didn't test. And
Mhm.
like, is it normal that I'm up like 5 pounds in a couple days? And with Anavar, you are going to get a little bit more or water retention. You're
Mhm.
going to get most of that water retention in the muscle though.
Yeah.
So if you notice that you're getting like moon face when you
Mhm.
start your Anavar, it's probably not Anavar.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if you're retaining like a lot of water right off the bat, I would say get off it right
Mhm.
away.
Yeah. And I
You
bet
should
that
get
water come right off.
right. And like, like I said, like Anavar, you like notice maybe like a pound, maybe a pound or two. But if you notice like right off the bat, like you're feeling uncomfortable with the water retention, I highly doubt that it's actually Anavar.
Right, I agree. Do you ever run into girls that are just like petrified or scared of injectables? Because I don't know how you feel about taking too many orals and you need to be cautious about the liver and stuff, but I know I personally enjoy, or I don't want to say enjoy, but I like I like injectables better if I can, because it just mentally I think works better, or
Yeah.
just like feels better for the body too, instead of too many orals. Because I mean, let's be honest, like most of us, and like as a pro, like when you're going to be taking some orals in your prep for sure. So in your off
Right.
season, like, because I'm in off season, I'm
Yeah.
trying to stay away from too much of the orals.
Yeah, I would say like, I tried to minimize the orals as much as possible. The liver impact is something that we definitely want to be mindful of.
Mhm.
That's another reason why, ladies, you can't run Anavar year round. It is
Mhm.
not good for your body.
Yep.
I do really like injectables for women. I know
Mhm.
women have a tough time with like syringes and needles,
Mhm.
but I use such small doses. Like I have most of my women microdosing.
Mhm.
So they're using really, really tiny, tiny doses.
Mhm.
And so in most cases, we're also having them do it sub Q. So it's a nice, like steady release that they're getting. And they're using an insulin pen. So the
Absolutely.
insulin pens, like they backload the insulin pens, and that makes it less scary.
Yeah.
And honestly, like once they've done it once or twice,
Mhm.
they're usually like they've adjusted to being able to give themselves an injection. But yeah, I prefer not to do like huge stacks of oral compounds. It's just like you said, it's too toxic on the liver.
Do you ever have anybody take any sort of supplement for the liver or anything while they're on an oral?
Absolutely. So, I have kind of like a whole protocol, like a health protocol that I have all my clients take while they're on cycle.
Okay.
And so, some of the things that like includes so it's actually the Amino Pure came up with a really good like detox formulation. So I have them do that, and that's got the Tud Cut in it, NAD and milk thistle, I believe.
Yep.
In that, like, and then I also have them do like a liposomal glutathione.
Mhm. Okay.
And I used to do the injectable glutathione. But that shit burns like crazy when you inject it.
Yeah.
So the liposomal like smells funny, but it's way better than injecting that fire water that you had like from, that's uncomfortable. So, but the glutathione works really good for that liver while you're on cycle too.
Right. And you know what, while you're on that subject too, I know do you still do a lot of the injectable L-carnitine too? I know that's pretty popular. I hear a lot of it now, and I know that's something that keeps people relatively lean. Now, is that an all year round thing for you, or how do you work with that?
Yeah, I generally take it all year round. And I kind of like switch back and forth between the injectable and the liposomal. Okay. Because, when you're doing like daily injections, you start to get lumped up, you start to get a little sore. So I'll take breaks every now and again from the injectable, and I'll do the liposomal, but I keep it in year round. And then I'll usually just do it first thing in the morning. And then when I'm trying to diet down, I'll either increase the dose, or I'll start taking it twice a day, where I'll do it before fasted cardio. And then I'll also do it before whatever weight training I have, because they're in 2 different times in the day. So yeah. And the L-carnitine, when you're on cycle and even post cycle, it's also going to help with the reuptake of your androgens. So it's going to help your anabolics work better at lower doses. So even if you're not going to be using it for, fat loss, but you're going to be going on cycle, it is something that's actually really good for women to use on cycle.
Yeah. I think, I've heard so much about it. I'm hearing more and more about it. And I just, I know that you're very knowledgeable with that subject to let people know, because I think that, I understand some people are afraid of needles, but I think in the long run, like you said, when it's like sub-Q and it's a very little insulin needle, it's really like not that bad, and it's a little better for you. You just got to get over that. And then for anyone that doesn't know, because you mentioned about backloading, that's when you have like a thicker needle for like your thicker oil bases, where you don't really want to use your little insulin needle and make it dull and then poke yourself with that. So anyone that didn't understand what a backload was, it's definitely more useful for your thicker oils that you'll be poking into yourself.
Yeah, and I actually have a video on the Cat's Clits and Clen, where it's the one about learn how to measure. Yes. And I actually show, I backload a pin, and I show people how to backload a pin. So if you guys are interested on how to do that, I think it's learn how to measure your anabolics.
That one's relatively new. You just, I think, came out with that like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that was one of last week's videos. Because I don't know if you get this all the time, but one of the things that really cranks me the wrong way is if I ask a woman how much testosterone she's been on or what her last cycle was, and she goes 0.5 ml, 0.2 ml. And it's that doesn't mean anything. That can mean 5 or 6 different things depending on what the concentration of your oil is. Yeah. So, to me, it brings to light that you clearly don't understand how much you are taking. And if any of the women that watch my content, clearly you care about preserving your femininity or your health or your longevity, at least one of those things. And if you care about those things, if you don't understand how much you're taking, how do you know that the dose you're taking is reasonable? It just sounds so willy-nilly. It's just in bodybuilding, we're so used to a structure, routine. Most of everything's written out. Why do you treat your gear it's just oh, I'm just taking it. I know it's going to do its job. And I don't even know really why. Just wait, you heard one person did it and you're okay, maybe I need to be on it too. And then they skipped the whole research part. And I'm you don't do I just don't understand the lack of communication. But then again, like you said at the beginning, there used to not be as much information out there. And it's very hard for a lot of women to talk about, because I know I was very open for a while, and then I saw somebody else was open and I said hey, it's really cool that you're doing this. And then she stopped because she said that she heard that judges were finding out. And then when competitors hear that judges find out, that could hurt their placing. So then they back off, because I've told people that, where I'm just who's watching and who's judging, because I guess a lot of these males in the sport don't want to see their women talking about gear, and then it becomes just weird shady shit, right? Well, here's the thing is there's a reason why someone like Arnold doesn't want women's physique and does not want women's bodybuilding on the Arnold stage. And it's not because of money. It's because Arnold thinks that women like that are freaks. And he does not want the general public to associate his name with freaks. Like, that's what it comes down to, ladies. Like, I hate to break to everyone, but that is the bottom fucking line. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, it's like, there's this kind of like confusing kind of like monkey wrench that got thrown into bodybuilding, right? Because in 2013, I think it was 2013, they like Arnold first took away female bodybuilding. And then the Olympia, I think it was 2014, took it away. And that was because, again, Arnold thought that female bodybuilders looked like freaks and he did not want to promote that. And so the IFBB followed suit because, again, they didn't want bad press from the way that female bodybuilders look and what they're doing to themselves. And female bodybuilding was, quote unquote, air quotes for those who can't see, like saved by Jake Wood, who owned the porn site Wings of Strength. And, you know, I think that it's great that female bodybuilders have a place to compete. I have many friends that are female bodybuilders. I value them. I think they're great people. I have not, like, they do whatever you want to your body. That's great. But the only, like, Jake Wood didn't bring female bodybuilding back because he wanted to give those poor female bodybuilders a place to compete. Ladies, you are fooling yourselves if you think that's why Jake Wood brought female bodybuilding back. That is not why. And I saw on Nick Trigili's, like, he did a video on Jake Wood, and Jake Wood goes, I brought female bodybuilding back because I want to show my daughters that they can do anything that they want to do with their lives. And it's like, Jake, all right, so you want your daughters to be on your porn site and to do female bodybuilding. That's what you like. That would be a good option for them, right? Like, because you're doing this for your daughters. Where the reality is Jake Wood brought female bodybuilding back because it's going to make him more money on his porn website for female bodybuilders. Like, it is not because he has, like, it's because he gets his rocks off on Flex for Pay shit. Like, that's what it comes, like, ladies, it didn't come back because he appreciates the sport of it. No, it's because it's filling his pockets with money, and it gives him direct access to the best athletes that are gonna get all of these schmoes off. Like, he's got the best fucking setup right now. And you know what? All of you female bodybuilders are his little toys. Like, and it's sad to me to see that, but you know, it's like, it's this weird kind of situation with female bodybuilding and women's physique right now, and the whole, like, judging that goes along with it, because I mean,
they still push for femininity. They're still looking for that femininity in the female bodybuilding, because, you know, the men that you're talking about that, like, want to see the muscle and pay for the porn sites and stuff, they're so confused why judges are still going for the femininity and not huge. Like, they're like, why aren't the huge girls winning? And it baffles me, because I understand, like, why the muscle worshipers would want more muscle to win, right? But as pursuit of the NPC and what they look for in most divisions, they're looking for that nice shape and beauty, but they don't want to say, like Hella Trevino, she's a big girl, and, you know, she looks like a muscular bodybuilder, right? But that's not going to quite win the Olympia, right? They're still going to go for Andrea, who looks fantastic. But it confuses a lot of people, because they still don't understand, like, isn't female bodybuilding supposed to be the biggest? But
right. I feel like there's kind of like this weird dichotomy right now where you have, like, the Manions, and especially Tyler Manion, who clearly, when he judges, he's always judging, he's like, the prettiest girl wins. The one that he thinks is hot and who he wants to fuck, that's who's winning. But if you get someone like Sandy, like Steve Weinberger, you're going to get more of, like, like bigger, harder, more muscular, right? So it's like weird because you've got kind of like people that are like kind of like into like understand that like we need to appease the schmoes and we need to appease Jake Wood. But then we have this other side is like we have to appease the Manions and we have to appease like Tyler Manion and like the mass media, right? Where like we have to like make sure that bodybuilding looks good in this mass media light, but we also have to make sure that the owner of the Olympia, Mr. Schmo Man, like he's going to be able to make his money, really promoting these like highly viralized women. So it's weird because it's like we got this weird dichotomy in bodybuilding right now. And for a little while, when I was actually playing with the idea of coming back and competing in like 2020. Okay. Then I ended up like hurting my shoulder. I needed to get shoulder surgery. And I was like, all right, maybe the universe is like, not in the cards, Jamie, just fucking give it up. So, but I was considering competing again. And then just like looking at the atmosphere of bodybuilding and really just like who was listening to my content, because I had already been talking about PEDs at that time. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm pretty sure that even if I showed up being the best out of everyone and blowing everyone out of the water, they probably still would not reward me. The IFBB is not that I've heard anything, either way, but here's the thing, like the IFBB doesn't want women talking about this because it is still taboo. It's still not okay in mainstream media for women to be using anabolics or PEDs. Like it is still not okay.
Yet
so
the pro level,
that,
everybody's on it. Pro level,
right.
I'm sorry, ladies. I mean, we talked about Sydney, who might not use little to none, but I'm telling you, the pro level.
I mean, I'm sure Sydney's on something, but she's not on stacks of gear, right? Like she's not using tons of anabolic. She's probably using like a little bit of Anavar, maybe like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But like she's just like sprinkling shit in, because that's how it should be when you're at that level, especially for a woman. When we're talking about male bodybuilders, whole nother like realm that we're talking about. But for the women, it's like, the women who are around for a long time, there's a reason they're around for a long time. Right. There's also a very good reason why we see women who compete for 3, 4, 5 years. And then all of a sudden, where the fuck did they fall off the fucking face of the planet? They are not to be found anywhere. And I know when I was coming up as a pro, there were a bunch of like pro women that I had followed that they were like the women I looked up to, that I wanted to be like, that like I always aspired to be like. And then I'm like, where the fuck are they? Because once I became a pro, they like fell off the face of the earth, like not on social media, like you couldn't find them anywhere. Come to find out, they're totally fucked up from all the drugs they've been doing for so long. And it's like, ladies, they're like, if you want longevity in this sport, and like bodybuilding is a marathon, it's not a motherfucking sprint. Look at Sydney Gillen. Yep. She has been at this for over a fucking decade. So ladies, like, don't rush into, let me do as many drugs as I possibly can to get there as fast as I can. No, fucking take your time so you can stay in the sport longer.
Right. And if you rush it, it's going to show. Like we know, like your skin and hair can change so quick, and some of the stuff you can't reverse. So it's like, if you rush it, you're going to really do some damage. And it's like, it's just like anything. If you rush, there's a lot of room for error. So like, you have to be cautious for sure.
Not only that, but like when you rush, especially when we're talking about rushing something that has permanent consequences, is you might get through your first 5 years of bodybuilding, and then you might realize that there are other things in life I want to pursue. There are other things that are going to be more important in life. And that may or may not happen to you. But if you're 5 years into that journey and you've already completely annihilated every part of your femininity, it's going to be hard. Even if you want to switch gears and focus on something different in your life, it's going to be really hard too. Because once you get back into like, quote unquote, the real world with quote unquote normal people, you are now a freak. Like, I'm sorry to say it. Like, I know there's this like, gender is a continuum bullshit that everyone that media talks about, but really living in reality as a viralized woman, it's not rainbows and sunshine, ladies. Like, people are going to be fucking nasty to you. You're going to have people that say things to you. I've had like, I'm a like fairly femme, like have been able to maintain like a fair amount of my femininity despite of everything that I've done. But I still have like guys that will think that I'm actually like was born a male and that I've just transitioned into being a female. And so it's like, do you want to be 5 years into this journey, decide you don't want to do it, or decide that there are more important things you want to pursue, like career, family, maybe a different sport, whatever it may be. But now you kind of like feel stuck and you feel like you have to stay with bodybuilding because you don't fit anywhere else. You don't feel comfortable being anywhere else. And so I see a lot of that too, where, you know, people who have kind of rushed that journey and then bodybuilding isn't even a part of their life anymore. They don't even fucking care about it anymore, but it's still having an impact on their relationships. I see this with young women all the time where you get 20-something-year-old women who their boyfriend is like, oh yeah, just do whatever I'm doing. And they do, and they get highly virilized. And then the boyfriend breaks up with him, starts dating a cute little bikini girl. Now you're virilized. You've got all the side effects that the boyfriend didn't care about at the time, but now you're single. Now you don't even want to do bodybuilding anymore because you're fucking pissed at yourself or how you fucking, all the changes you've made that you can't fucking reverse now. Yeah. And they end up depressed. They end up lonely. They end up not wanting to date. They're not comfortable with their bodies. And it's like this whole downward spiral of some of these women's lives. So, you know, not only like, and I kind of brought this up when, what's his name? Boston Lloyd, when Boston Lloyd died, you know, someone had posted on one of like the remembrance posts, like, you know, something about like what he, like, I bet he regrets it now, like everything that he did. And it's like, well, he's dead. So like, he can't regret it now. But my point is when you're 20, when you're 25, when you're in the beginning of this journey, you may have no sight of what your future is going to be like. Right. So even if you think you don't want kids, even if you think you're going to be married to the same guy forever, even if you think the guy who says, I'm okay with your clip being big, like what, even if you think he's going to be around, you think when Boston was 18, 19, 20 and like pushing all those crazy drugs, did you think he thought he was going to leave behind his son?
No. Oh,
no. And it's like, you know, so ladies, remember the choices that you make today are going to have impacts not only on your life in the future, but it may have impact on the other people that come into your life in the future. And it's going to, you know, if you end up fucking up your kidneys, if you end up fucking up your liver, your heart, your hormones, whatever it may be, and you know, that's going to have an impact on your family downstream.
One of my favorite YouTube episodes you did was about the dating. Because it spoke to me because I know that you even mentioned a few things. I remember you talked about how you had a phone call, I believe, with a guy and you could just tell that he was like questioning your voice. And like, those are the things that like, I know like I can talk to you and like relate to it. Right. But there's another thing whenever like the men start to give their perspective, like when you were on the Excellence Cartel with the guys, like, and I really liked what questions they had for you because it was like, see, those are questions as a female to a female I wouldn't think of. But they like asked some really interesting questions where I'm like, I'm really glad they did because it really opened my eyes because with dating, you know, you've talked about when you get too big, like you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, or you get the guys that just want to use you as a novelty. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, this is clicking so much because it's just the things that I don't think, because girls want to look good for themselves, right? And that's great. Look good for you. But then when you want to continue to date, just remember that, you know, a lot of fit guys don't always like the fit girls, you know?
Right. Exactly. And I think that, you know, a lot of women think just like, oh, I'm married and my husband's okay with it. You know what, sweetheart? So was I. So was I. I was married too. You know, like a relation, like a marriage, just because you're, and like, even if you're the most religious person and like, you would rather die than get divorced. Well, here's a thought. What if your husband dies?
Yeah.
You like, I mean, I guess you can not date at all, but I'm sure that if you're fairly young, you're probably going to want to date again and you're probably going to want someone else in your life. And that's like, the more viralized you are, like, I mean, you got to kind of think of it the same way you think of, like a male to female transitioner. Like you see some of those guys who transition into women and they are fucking hot. Like they are hot women, man. Like if you didn't tell me that they were a dude before, I would not know. Like that Blair White, like, man, like Blair White's voice is way more feminine than mine. She probably moves more feminine than I do. My point is, there are a lot of women who would not date Blair White just because Blair White used to be a dude. Just like there's a very small pool of men who are okay with dating women who are viralized. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Here's the thing, ladies, we are the ones that we are abnormal. Like it is not normal for women to have really deep voices, to have all of this muscle. Clearly, we've done this in a way that is not natural. So, we can't be upset about what norms or standards or whatever there else is. No, like, sorry, ladies, but you are going way above and beyond what your natural body is supposed to be doing. So, you really can't blame them for not being attracted or not wanting to date women like that. Like, it's a very like specific and, like there's only going to be so many dudes that are into that. So it is like really narrow down your dating pool when you allow yourself to become viralized. And a lot of women can't handle that when it actually comes to time to really like have to live in that body and experience that. Because you're going to get a lot of guys too that are just like, they're nasty, they're mean,
Especially now, everybody wants to voice an opinion, and it's just like some people can't handle it because they're just like, especially when you work so hard on yourself, and it's like, you don't like how I look, but I work so hard. I'm like, okay, yeah, you work hard, but like that doesn't entitle everybody to like you just because you look good for yourself. And when it comes to dating, like I don't blame men if they think I'm like too big and it's too hard or whatever, or maybe they look in the future and they think, oh, when she's in prep again, like I don't know if I want to deal with that, because I know for a fact as a competitor it's not a great idea to date people when you're in the off season and then you go into prep and it's like, who is this person?
Whole new life, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's also like the guys that I've dated, one thing I kind of noticed is they also are worried about what other people are going to think with them dating a woman who's viralized. Like I know for like some of the guys I've talked to, it's like they need to ask their friends, like they would like show them a picture, like, is she hot? Like making sure that their friends thought that I would, you know what I'm saying? Like they want to feel, yeah. And I know that for like some other guys, it's like, bringing you home to their parents.
Yeah.
Like, is mom and dad going to be like, yo, son, why is her voice so low? Like,
right. I've been there. Definitely been there, especially when you can tell that the parents are like pretty religious and they're looking for this, white picket fence. I always say they're looking for a Melania Trump, that next, the nice, pretty girl that does what she's supposed to. And then I'm thinking like, if you bring in a muscular girl, that is the complete opposite. But usually that's what their son likes. Their son typically will like that kind of woman, not the yes, ma'am.
Right. And it's like, of course we don't want to be dated. Like we don't want to shape ourselves or our bodies to what other people want. And just because to get a partner, but at the same time, you have to understand if you're going to go to these extremes with your body, that you have to have the expectation that life is not going to be the same for you. The way that people react to you is not going to be the same. When people look at you, they're not thinking the same thing that they were thinking before you were viralized. And it's like, I think women just need, we talk about the viralization side effects, right? Now we've been talking more about the health side effects because we got a lot of people dying in bodybuilding. But one thing that we still don't really talk about is how differently you're treated as a viralized woman. The things in your social interactions, in your interactions in life, that are different. And that goes for even like real life experience, but also like social media. You know, women who have even a little bit of like, you even see girls who are in the bikini division that you see some of the comments and people like, ew, that's so gross. That's disgusting. Too much muscle, you know? So it's like, you also going to have a lot of people who come at you at social media who are like, oh, you're so gross. You're so this, you're so that. And it's like, you know, for me, I always love to like kill those people with kindness and like, you know, be like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy you took time out to tell me how much you think I'm disgusting. You must really have nothing else going on in your life. I feel so bad for you. You know, it's like, I don't know, to me, like people who do that in the first place, it's like, I don't have the time in the day to give people negative feedback on the things I don't like. I feel bad for those people that you really have nothing else going on in your life that you just have to bring me down. Like, wow.
Right. I would rather give compliments all day. I mean, I follow a lot. That's the thing. And I don't know why I follow so many pretty girls and I'm just like, I just want to compliment everybody. So to think like I can't think of myself, and I'm sure you're the same. Like, I just can't, like, I don't wake up every day and be like, I need to give one negative comment to someone and just ruin their day. And it's like, that's terrible because, you know, I just treat people how I want treated. That's just how it goes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's, you know, to me, it's also like the keyboard warriors, you know, I think that it can also give you a little bit of insight as to almost like what it's going to be like when you walk outside, what people are really thinking in their heads. Right. And it's like, you know, those are usually the things that people are silently saying to themselves. But also having that understanding that like, you know, the world is not going to see you the same way anymore. And you've got to have a really thick skin if you're going to let yourself kind of like go down that road. And, you know, like some people thrive and it doesn't bother them and that's okay. But, you know, just make sure you know for yourself and you realize that, you know, it's going to be different afterwards.
Right. And you're a bodybuilder. You chose this, you know, you're not like a celebrity, like a Kim Kardashian, where people say rude shit about her all the time and they don't even know her. And then it's like, you get that one comment, you don't even know that person. They say you're too big. Don't let that like ruin you. Like, it's just, for every one hater, there's probably 5 people that really support you and you look good. And I know that gets me by. Like, I know we were talking about dating and how hard it is for muscular girls or virilized girls to get anywhere, but it's not even just me. I have a lot of friends that aren't in the bodybuilding that just can't seem to find a date either. So I'm just like, okay, it's
the dating world sucks for everyone right now. Because I'm not like, I have a bunch of girlfriends that like don't use anabolics, they don't compete, and they're like, Jamie, it's fucking hell out here. I'm like, oh, all right, well, at least not me. But I do feel like there is like, you know, I feel like the virilized women, like we definitely have an extra layer there too. But you know, kind of like circling back to the anabolics, I also think that a lot of women, they tend to push it a little bit too far because as you were saying about like the people you follow these pretty women, right? And so like when we flood our feeds with the perfect bodies, all these hypermuscular women, and like that's the only thing that's going on your feed. You're seeing all female, but all people that compete all day long. So you're comparing yourself against that all the time. And so, yeah, you're going to feel like I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to get there faster. Where like, make sure you also take a step back and go back into the real world. Go to somewhere like Walmart, go to somewhere like an airport, because like where you are right now is probably still way more muscular than most people in the entire fucking country like walk around looking like. So, you know, also just remember like we need to stop comparing ourselves to all of the perfect people that post the perfect picture, the best picture on Instagram all the time, and really like step back and be like, okay, this is how my body is and this is how I exist in the real world amongst normal real people. I know a pretty like interesting experience for me is like, so my mom is very used to like being around me and the way that I look and how much muscle I have. She's like used to it now, right? And she's been very supportive. We went on vacation together. We went to the Dominican, and I had dieted down for it and I was looking really good. And so like walking around in my bikini and tank tops and shorts all day, everyone on the island was like flexing at me, and like nobody said anything like negative. It was all very much in fun, and they were all like very appreciative of my physique, which was awesome. It was great to have that positive feedback. But my mom at one point, she goes, wow, Jamie, like, she's like, I'm just so used to you looking this way. I forget that like you're like weird to everyone else, like, so it's like, it's interesting to see kind of that, like, I think that we have this disconnect with like thinking that we need to be so much more muscular and so much more leaner, where it's like, we need to realize that we're limiting what we're seeing all day long and comparing ourselves to these like huge mass monsters or these Olympians or these high level pros that are posting just their best pictures, their best pictures,
the highlights. Yes.
And that's how we judge what actions we take with our bodies and what chances we're willing to take. Right. And then we step into the real world with those altered bodies that are like way different than what normal people walk around in. And then I think women are kind of caught off guard that like, oh, wow, like people are giving me a really hard time for looking and being like this,
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up your mom being supportive too, because I guess I hear more and more that people don't have supportive parents, and like I do. And I know that it's just like what you said, like as a bodybuilder, you should try to separate yourself sometimes to look at the real world and what else is out there. Same thing for your parents. Like when my parents started going to shows, now they realize like when people say like, oh, isn't Paige getting a little big? They'll be like, no, she's not. We've seen the female bodybuilders. We've seen physique. She's just figure. Like it's there. And then they understand too, like they know my PED usage too. So my mom like knows like she's not pushing it, because if she starts getting like, they know what to look for. If it's like, no, you're lying, you're doing more or something, like they would know voices and stuff too. So it's just trying to be more knowledgeable, more aware. And I think because when you're so consumed in bodybuilding, I know you've done a video on like meditation and stuff, but it's very important to find other things, like even in prep. The biggest thing you can do for yourself is find another hobby to like it will just change you mentally for your mental health.
Oh, absolutely. When you let yourself become all consumed with bodybuilding all the time, that's all you're that's all you're thinking about. Granted, when I was at the Olympia level, like that needed to be like really the only thing that I had, because again, when you're talking about like being one of the best in the world, like, if I was a professional skier, the only thing I'd be thinking about all the time would be skiing. Right. So like same thing, but there also has to be a takeaway from that where, okay, my life was so hyper focused on bodybuilding for, especially as I was a pro, like that's all my life was. And then once that was over, I will tell you, ladies, I didn't have anything else. And that made everything like, because I had an injury, I was going through like hormonal dysfunction, and not having anything else was a huge detriment to my recovery. And I feel like had I had something else, then it probably would have mentally been a lot easier for me when I was going through all of that. And I think especially for those of you who aren't going to be Olympians, you aren't going to be one of the best in the world, is remember that like this sport, it's something that you're choosing to do. It's not paying your, like, trust me, none of you guys are fucking paying your bills competing. Like, like none of you. No. So it's like, you've got to also make sure that you aren't sacrificing relationships, that you aren't sacrificing like the other things in your life that, once bodybuilding's gone, like what else are you going to have? Right.
Absolutely. And it's especially with money, because this plate, like the sport will drain you. You'll be spending girls before, like, I know you do your own makeup and hair and stuff, but like the suits alone are so expensive. I can't make a suit like that. And like, that's like the females. And then I think another thing is that everyone wants to turn pro. Okay. Well, don't forget that you still have to pay for a pro card yearly, just like the NPC membership. And no, you don't have to pay to do the show. You sign a contract, but if you break it, you have to pay the fee that they have, which is, I think was like $300 if you break the contract fee for.
It used to be like 10 grand.
That's crazy. See, I wouldn't know, and I don't think that that's ever talked about, because girls they're just so like, they don't think about these things. And then for most pros, you're probably going to have to travel for most of your shows. And
Oh
then you have to
yeah.
consider the Uber and the plane and the food and
Mhm.
a lot of the other, and then of course gear like we were talking about, because in prep, you're probably going to use a little bit more than maybe the off season.
And
And
yeah, and we have to remember that when you use gear, you're not just paying for that $100 bottle of Anavar, you're paying for the blood work. You're paying for all the health supplements you're on. You're paying for the PCT after. So, your one cycle of Anavar doesn't really just cost $100 like for that one bottle of Anavar. It's much more than that. Depending on how much your blood work is cost, do you have to pay that for that out of pocket? Like what kind of health supplements do you need? What did you see in your blood work? What does your blood work look post cycle? All these things. Yeah. I mean, the cost it's expensive. And I think one thing, like, with the people who like rush to get to the pro card, it's like, all right, well, you realize that once you get the pro card, you are the bottom of the barrel. Like the only thing that changes is that your competition is a fuck of a lot harder.
oh yeah, that's where I'm at. This is my off season for pro. And I keep telling people I'm taking my damn time and I'm doing this on like little to no gear. And that's going to take me a little longer. And I'm okay with that for the longevity. So it's just, I try to remind girls too, that it's just like, yes, you want that pro status. That's what they want. They want to put it on Instagram or whatever else. And that's great. Like it's a great title. It's hard to do, right? But don't forget that then national shows are more money. So you better be ready to turn pro at those shows. And then on top of that, like you said, you're back down at the bottom. And most of us, like me, you're going to have to take a long off season. So you might be off the stage. And if you have a bad relationship with food, or like you said, like have a hard time eating or like putting on that weight, that it's just not good. Like this sport is going to be very hard for you if you're already like stopping yourself from the opportunity that could happen, but you want to look good for the gram and you want to do this and that. And I'm like,
And it's like, you really got to ask yourself, like, what are you getting out of getting that pro status? And honestly, like these days, I really don't like when someone says that they're a pro, it really doesn't impress me anymore, to be honest with you. Like usually my next question usually is, how many pro shows have they done and how have they done? Because there are a lot of people who get pro cards that should not have gotten pro cards. And what I mean by that is back like 10 years ago, third, fourth place at Team U was not getting a pro card.
no.
I don't know any other professional sport where third, fourth, and fifth place earn you your professional status. I don't know. And what it really comes down to is how much money the NPC and IFBB is making. The more pro cards they give out, guess what? The more money they make.
I was just saying this today.
More money.
Because I saw somebody posted about Junior USA's, okay? And Junior USA's only gives out the overall pro card. So I don't know anybody doing it, but I know a lot of people doing Junior Nats, and that's like every class winner, right? And it just boggles my mind because I'm like, wait a minute. So there's that chance for one pro card, but I don't know anybody doing that show.
Yeah.
They're all going to flock, like you said, to the pro card stuff. And like, I know North Americans is really popular, and I got my pro card at USA's in Arizona last year. And it's like, they give out first and second in every class. And like, to me, like, I would be kind of sad if I was second place and got my pro card, to be honest. Like, and that's nothing to take away from the girls that did. It just, to me, in my mind, I'd be like, well, this is going to be like a 4-year off season or something if it was a second place pro. But hey, I mean, some competitors have done that second place and did really well in the Olympia and everything. It's just, it all depends on who shows up at the show, right?
Right. And I think it's like, it is contextual, but I think when we're talking about like Team U, where you literally have like third and fourth place that is getting pro cards, like, I don't know. Cause honestly, like I got second at nationals when I got my pro card. And then I went on to win my pro debut. I was actually at the time one of the only, there was like me and maybe like 2 or 3 other people who had won their pro debut in the IFBB ever. So it was like one of the very few to be able to do that. Granted, the girl who won above me was Tony West, who had been like a pro in other leagues for like 15 years. So again, contextual, right?
Right.
But I think that when we're looking at the level of, we're at a show like Team U, or I'm trying to think I think there's like another like Pittsburgh show or something that it's like where they have the masters
National?
classes that kind of like go like overlap,
Yeah,
because
North
you'll
America
have
does
girls
that.
like who had gotten their pro card in the masters division, and like in like they can cross over so many times that it ends up that like third, fourth, and fifth place get pro cards, where it's like, no, like either don't allow that many, it comes down to money, because of course crossovers, because the crossover, every time you cross over, the NPC makes more money. And then every time they give another pro card, that's another 200. Like now it's 250 a year. Eventually it's going to be 300. Then it'll be 350. And every single person that keeps on renewing their fucking pro cards, they're making the IFBB more money. So for them to have more pros, they don't care about the prestige. They don't fucking give a shit. The only thing the IFBB and NPC care about is dollar bills. They don't give a flying fuck about any of the competitors. They don't care about anything. They care about money, and that is it. And so to me, like, it just also like cheapens the sport. I remember like you used to go to the New York Pro, and like when you went to the New York Pro, it was like, wow, like everyone at the New York Pro showed up looking awesome. You're like, this is exciting. And like, it was so much fun. I remember it was a couple years ago. I like when they started giving out so many pro cards. I went to New York Pro and I was like, I felt like I was watching an amateur show. Nobody was fucking in shape. I was like, what the fuck happened to this sport?
Oh yeah. I see that it's just at the Boston Pro. It was a very small show and I only knew like a handful of the figure girls. But the ones that were like at the last call outs, I was like, oh no, like you are last call outs for like a reason. And like, no offense to a lot of the Masters winners, but you can tell when a girl got her pro card at Masters for the most part.
Right.
And then I don't know, like the Arnold was really exciting, right? But they picked those athletes.
Right.
So then that's so different too, because if it's a show like the Boston where people just sign up, and let's face it, a lot of the earlier shows usually going to have a smaller number too, which is kind of like womp womp. But
right. So yeah, it's interesting to see the whole industry right now. And that's kind of like why I've got this kind of like bad taste in my mouth about competing. And I'm like, I'm just going to watch everything play out for now.
And I don't blame you at all. And, like we said, it's an expensive sport. And if you put all this time, you have to really want it. You have to really enjoy that stage time. And I think it's great what you're doing right now on YouTube and kind of giving a voice for, the girls after competing, because that's needed too. And it's just, I don't think there's a lot of that being talked about at all. Because like you said, girls will just quit the sport and disappear. And like, then they're forgotten about, because if you're not relevant on social media, people will forget you real fast now. It's sad.
Yeah. And it's sad to see what some people will do. Like if they try to like come back to social media, like to get the attention, or if they're not getting the attention, that just,
Yes, it's very rough around the edges. And I hope that the sport does well. I enjoy all the divisions, and I know that we've got tons of shows coming up. I mean, the year is technically just started for us, so I'm excited to see it. And, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and everything. I know we're almost at an hour here, or already over, but I just want everyone to know that your YouTube has tons of information. So if anybody has questions on PEDs, competing, and then you also just have great life tips on there too. So check out.
I started to get a little bit more into like the mindset kind of stuff too. I felt like it was important for me to share that, because when I was coming up in bodybuilding, there was a clear delineation from when I started like doing really, really well, and really like it was like I hit another level. And the only thing that changed was that I started really like training my mind and really doing more mindset stuff. And I started using less anabolics. Those are the two, like I started using less gear, and I started focusing more on what was going on in my head, the way that I talk to myself, meditation, affirmations. And that's really what made me into an Olympian. And I've said it many times before that if it was not for my meditative practice, I would never have made it to the Olympia.
Right. And
Sure.
I think now with social media, like we talked about these haters and everything else, that whatever you want to call them, you really have to work on mental toughness, because
Yeah.
I know that I've done shows and people said, you're not going to do it. And I said, I don't care. Like, I'm still, just because you say I shouldn't do it doesn't mean I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm done, throwing in the towel. So work on the mindset, like you said. And then if the mind works, the rest of the body will just fall into place and you'll end up looking better, right?
Exactly. And that's what I say to people all the time is like, if your mind and soul's not okay, your body's not going to do what we want it to do.
Oh no, stress, sleep, like we talked about. Let's start there, guys.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And if you guys want to, hear some more content about women, bodybuilding, and PEDs, definitely go check out Kat's Clits and Clen. Leave me some nice messages, and I would love for you guys to subscribe. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. Oh, and everyone that wants to follow you on Instagram, it's at Jamie Pinder14. So I wanted to throw that in there too, but your YouTube's great. So everybody go there. And again, looking forward to more content from you, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, Jamie. I'll see you.
You too. Thank you so much.
See you.